Hey everyone, welcome back. So this video is going to be all about the Docker host networking option or networking mode. It's going to be really short, pretty straightforward, so I just want to get right into it. First, to just kind of show you what my lab looks like, I have this vSphere host 254.10. This is actually a physical server. You can actually see model here. It's a super micro ATX box that I have in my lab right next to me right now. On top of that, I have a VM that I've named Docker 01. This is running Ubuntu 20.0.4, I believe it is. And this VM has an IP of 254.11. So I want you to kind of keep that IP in mind. Just place it somewhere or come back because you will see that again. So now I'm going to go to an SSH session that I have already established to that VM. All right, so here we are in the SSH session of that VM, just to kind of give you guys a lay of the land again. If we do ifconfig, we see here that we have this IP, this 254.11. So if I look at let's first look at containers. We don't have any running, that's good. Let's also take a look at our networks, Docker network ls. And we see we have our default networks here. We have the bridge network that we talked about extensively in our last video. We have the host network. We can only have one of these because we're basically kind of borrowing this IP or binding the container to that IP, so we can't have more than one host network. And then we have none, which just disables container networking altogether. So in our case, we want to create an image, or we want to create a container rather, based on an image. And then we want to assign it to the host network. And then we just want to validate that everything is working right. And I'm also going to go a step further and actually expose a port on that container. So let's get right to it. I'm going to use this host network. So we're going to keep that right there. I'm going to do Docker run. I'm going to give it a name. We'll call it web01a. How about that? I'm going to assign it a network by doing -- network equals and then the network name. In this case, it's host. I'm going to do a --P. This is basically means I want to publish all ports. What that means is any port that Apache is listening on, because I'm going to use an Apache image. So any port that container is listening on, whatever that is, I want to make it available to the outside world, basically. So I'm good with that. And let's see, I'm going to do a -D. This is going to run the container in detached mode so that basically the container won't exit immediately as soon as I hit enter. If you don't do this, sometimes you'll find that the containers, literally you hit enter and it creates them and then they disappear. And you can validate that through like a docker ps-a. You can actually see that. In this case, I think this is good. So I'm going to use an HTTPD image. This is just Apache, nothing fancy here. I think that looks good. Let me just review that. So we have our network here, our name. We're going to expose the ports. I think that's good. So let's hit enter. All right, so that worked. Now let's make sure that the container is actually running. And we see it is. So web01a. Now here's the real test. So if I did it right, it should be listening on port 80. Now what the -P will do, so just to kind of confirm this, is if we do a curl against our own IP, just using our loopback, I'll specify port 80. I don't have to, but it's just a good habit. Let's see what we get back. And there we have it. So we get back an Apache page. And just to validate, let me pull open a web page. There we go. So I was trying to hit it on the loopback, and I'm not sure why I was doing that. But if I hit my own IP, there you go, port 80, it works, everything's fine. Just to kind of prove the point, let me go here and I'll actually kill the container and we'll see that it immediately stops working. So I'll do docker kill web01a. As soon as I kill that, I will no longer be able to access this. And you see here, it's just spinning because the container is down. So that's all we needed to do. So now, the nice thing about host mode is that it does make it, I guess, relatively easy to access it because we have accessibility to the VM in the first place, that 254.11. But the bad thing is, let's say I go in here and I go, let's go Docker web, or I'll start a web02a. So I'm going to start up a new one just to show you guys it still works, or it will work. So now this is a new container, not the same one we just were working on. There we go. So now it's up with that container. But here's where it gets kind of messy. I'm going to go ahead and, by the way, this isn't, as I mentioned, this is not scripted. We'll go with web03a. So it looks like everything was good there. Now what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to go into one of these containers. I'll do docker exec it. I'm going to go into web03a. And I'm going to do the bash shell. Oops, why is that? Oh. Yeah, okay, it's not running. So I'm going to do docker logs web03a. So I was trying to show you guys the problem, and for some reason I was thinking it was going to tell me here or here. So you see here, it made me think that it worked fine. It gave me the same response that it gave me when I created web02a. So by all means, or by all appearances right here, everything worked fine. But you see here why host mode creates a challenge for us. It's because right here, this is kind of the secret. It could not bind to 0.0.0 port 80. Now, why do you think that is? If you said that's because web02a is already binded to that port, you would be correct. Just to kind of prove a point, let's say we do docker kill web02a, and all I'm going to do is execute the exact same command. So this is web03a. I'm going to give it a different name because it will fail if I don't give it a name. So I'm going to say o3b, and we're going to hit enter. Now let's do docker logs for web03b. And there you go, it's working just fine. So if I go navigate to that IP again, it's coming up all day long. So that's it in a nutshell. That kind of presents, it was a little messy, but I showed you guys exactly why host mode creates a bit of a challenge when we're deploying a bunch of containers, especially if they're trying to publish themselves on the same ports. We can definitely change the ports, but this problem still persists that we're always going to run into that, where we only have one port of that particular port. So if we needed to have multiple containers listening on port 80, for example, or exposed on port 80 to the outside world, we would run into a challenge here. So hopefully that illustrates the point. Hopefully you guys got some value out of this. I enjoyed this. Hopefully you do too. I'll see you guys in the once we get to the actual Kubernetes stuff, which is coming up shortly. So thank you. See you guys there.